Pinocchio. So Pinocchio is another live-action adaptation of a Disney animated classic, and the third so far to have been released on Disney Plus after Lady and the Tramp and Mulan. And I remember when this film was announced and just how excited I was for it, because for those who know me personally will realise how much the original film means to me, how much it influenced my life and my childhood. I was just really happy to learn that we were going to be getting another adaptation of Pinocchio, at least the Disney version of it, but in live action. But I also was a little bit sceptical at the same time because, of course, you know, it's another remake, and, you know, often remakes don't really work out, do they? You know, as some of the live action Disney remakes that we've had in recent years haven't. Not all of them, but some haven't worked. And I think what comes with emotion from the original film are much, much higher expectations for the remake. So I kind of bear those things in mind and tried not to get too emotionally carried away, while at the same time tried to think of it as another version of it, rather than just saying it's good because it's just another version of the Disney one. So in this live action adaptation of Disney's beloved classic, lonely inventor Geppetto creates a wooden marionette called Pinocchio. His wish for Pinocchio to become alive comes true, but with the help of Jiminy Cricket, Pinocchio must prove himself to become worthy enough of becoming a real boy by becoming brave, truthful and unselfish. So as you probably would expect, the plot is pretty much the same in this one as the original animated film. But what I found interesting about this, like a lot of other Disney live action adaptations, was that because they were going to extend the running time, it was an opportunity to explore other things as part of the characters and the story, but in a bit more depth. Because we've seen additional musical numbers in others in the past, and we've seen some further sequences that weren't in the original animated version, but in the new one, that allowed us to understand the characters a little bit more. And that was usually to give the characters a little bit more context. This one and the original are structured in many ways like into segments, because Pinocchio, in order to become a real boy, he needs to be brave, truthful and unselfish. So 3 things, and that's why he meets 3 different foes throughout the film to prove his worth. And in this film we did of course get some bits, despite the narrative being practically the same. We got some additional musical numbers, like from the Blue Fairy, we got another one from Geppetto, and also there were some additional characters as well, which we'll go on to a bit later in the video. But I think at the same time that was the film's downfall as well, because the story of Pinocchio, at least Disney's version of it, is quite bloated anyway. There's a lot of characters, a lot of subplots within a very short space of time. So I think by adding other bits in, it became overstuffed. And the film was directed by Academy Award winner Robert Zemeckis. And particularly in recent years, he's done a number of family adaptations based on famous books and stories such as The Polar Express, A Christmas Carol, and most recently The Witches. And of course 2 of those are fully animated, while the other one is live action but has certain CGI elements, and in here this one is exactly the same. And I must say the CGI was a bit of a mixed bag in my opinion, because there were certain things that worked absolutely perfectly. They looked fantastic on certain characters, like Honest John's CGI was fantastic, Pleasure Island was brilliant as well, but I felt like the CGI for Jiminy Cricket, the cat Figaro, the fish Cleo, and sometimes Pinocchio himself was a little bit inconsistent. And I think when you've got a film that showcases magic on the screen as well as trying to achieve that for the audience emotionally, then there's got to be a level of consistency, and there just wasn't as far as the CGI is concerned in this film. But I do like Bob Zemeckis as a director, but I think he's kind of dipping a little bit, and I think he needs to kind of find a film and make one that kind of gives him that push and that rebirth, so to speak. And I'm not entirely sure he did that with this one. But we did see Bob Zemeckis reunite with Tom Hanks in his 4th collaboration after Forrest Gump, Castaway and The Polar Express. And upon finding out that Tom Hanks was going to play Geppetto, I thought to myself, is this a dream? Is this really happening? Because Tom Hanks is my favourite actor, and the Disney version just means the absolute world to me. And the fact they've got these 2 coming together for the live action adaptation, I just thought, could this get any better? And I just knew that Tom Hanks was going to be a great choice for Geppetto, because he's just so good at providing us with such warm, emotional characters, and you know, you just fall in love with him when you watch him on the screen, and he's just one of the most legendary and iconic actors of all time. And that's what Geppetto's about, because he's very lonely, but also he's very kind-hearted, and he's just a very nice character, and that's why it was such a good match for Tom Hanks, and he delivered such a good performance. In fact, he's probably the best part, and I expected him to be anyway, but he really, really was the best part in this film. Alongside Geppetto, another character I was particularly intrigued about was Jiminy Cricket, and he was voiced by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I know I've already criticised the CGI of Jiminy Cricket because he pretty much looked like an artichoke with clothes on and a voice. And the characterisation of this character was no different than it was in the original. 1, you couldn't even tell that it was Joseph Gordon-Levitt's voice, and 2, it didn't even matter that it was him, because the character just sounded like another impression of Cliff Edwards, who played Jiminy Cricket in the original film. So in that respect, you've got to acknowledge Gordon-Levitt's attempt at Cliff Edwards' voice. But I also just think, if that's what they were wanting to do, then why cast him? They could have just cast anybody. You know, it didn't even matter that it was Joseph Gordon-Levitt. It could have been anybody who could have done it. And the same can be said for the Pinocchio character as well. And I get that it's different because it's a young boy who's about 9 years old and they need to cast him as Pinocchio, and most 9-year-olds aren't in film until that point when they've been cast. And we had Benjamin Evan Ainsworth who played Pinocchio. And again, like Jiminy Cricket, it didn't really matter who it was, as long as it was just a young boy who sounded very similar to Dickie Jones, who played Pinocchio in the original film. So I think those things were a criticism in terms of lack of creativity, but equally on the same score, it was faithful to the original. And speaking of faithful to the original, the physical appearance of Pinocchio is pretty much exactly the same as the original. And I know the film's only just come out, but I think as the film goes on and the more people watch it, they'll compare it to a lot of other CGI characters in films like The Lion King by saying, why couldn't they recreate the physical appearances of the lions in the original Lion King in the new version? And the answer is simple: because Pinocchio is a puppet. He's not real. Lions are real. So if they want to create a CGI live action version of the Lion King, then they've got to try and create characters that are authentic to what lions look like. And that's probably a criticism of that film, because lack of emotion. But because Pinocchio is a puppet, it didn't really matter. I'm not saying I was, moved by the character, but I'm just saying that the gist of it is there about the emotional connection between the voice and the vocal performance and the way that the character is designed on the screen. Meanwhile, more supporting characters included Luke Evans, who played the coachman, and it's the second time that he's played a Disney villain, the previous time being Gaston in Beauty and the Beast. And to be fair, despite being visibly different than the original one, I really liked Luke Evans' portrayal of this character, because he was dirty, he was gritty, he was already very, manipulative straight away, and you got that feeling from him. And I really liked the Pleasure Island sequence. I thought that was really cool. And if I had the chance to go, I'd go myself. But there were some other supporting characters who had a significant part in the film, but their appearance was cut short and they didn't really have a significant role in the film as what they could have had. Particularly Cynthia Erivo's character as the Blue Fairy. Don't get me wrong, I liked her performance in this film and I thought she did a good job, but I think it was just from a filmmaker's point of view, a missed opportunity to capitalise on how much of an impact that she could have had in this film, because they could have had more sequences involving her and her assisting Pinocchio along with Jiminy on his journey to becoming a real boy. So they missed a trick in that regard, I would say. And I don't think any of the portrayals in this film are better than the original, except just the one, and I would say that is the portrayal of Honest John, and his voice was provided by Keegan-Michael Key. And what I liked about Honest John in this one was just how manipulative he was, how controlling he was towards Pinocchio, and Gideon for that matter as well. And you could see through the CGI the emotional manipulation that the character possesses. And also Giuseppe Battiston also gave a great performance as Stromboli too, and he practically mirrored the physical and emotional attributes of the original Stromboli. And also Battiston's the only Italian actor in this film, and the film is of course set in Italy and it was based on an Italian story, so that was a nice touch, and I'm glad they actually were genuine enough to cast an Italian actor as Stromboli. There have been a numerous amount of Pinocchio adaptations over the years. Some have taken a darker turn while also others have taken a lighter turn, as we found out in the Disney film, although there were some dark moments. But this one pays homage to that film, but it just didn't have the same soul and heart as what the original one had. So overall, Pinocchio is a film that I think to myself was just okay. It was just decent for the performances, particularly from Tom Hanks and Luke Evans, and it was let down by the CGI for being so inconsistent and the structure of the story and lacking that emotional soul. But I still would say that I enjoyed it, and I would probably watch it again. And maybe that's me being a bit biased because I love the original film, and I'll probably look at this as like a guilty pleasure because I've addressed the flaws, as you found out in this video, but I would just, just put that to one side and just appreciate it for what it is, because I knew it wasn't going to be better than the original, but it's just something I can just happily sit down and just enjoy. So what did you think of Pinocchio? How do you think it fares off compared to the other Disney live action remakes? Is it better than the original, or is it a whole lot worse? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, if you did go on to enjoy this video, then please hit the like button and subscribe for more, and to have a notification bell ticked so you're notified when I upload a new video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care everybody.